pleasure to introduce Max Page. I'm sure most of you don't need to know more about Max because he's done so much over the years. You know so much already. And I just remembered something when I went on to the MTA website. He is the new vice president as of September, sworn in, yes, of the MTA, the Mass Teacher Association. And when I was reading about Max, I realized that I had actually taught his daughter Aviva in Amherst. So that was interesting. And also, it's really apropos that I'm introducing Max because 4 years ago, the MTA sent out emails to members and asked people to go testify about keeping the cap on charter schools at the State House. And I took a personal day and I went to Boston and I happened to be on the docket with Max. We were both there together. And I also find it interesting because that same day, Senator Sonia Chang-Diaz spoke about the foundation budget. I was there to keep the cap on charter schools. I was like, what is she talking about, this foundation budget? But she brought it to the forefront then because she was in charge of the committee to investigate what has happened and transpired over the years. So there are many more people that can speak more eloquently about this, especially Max Page. So please give him a big welcome.
Thanks. Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Wow, this is a beautiful sight. Everyone should come up here and see this view. This is fantastic. So there's a lot of people who are going to say a lot about this campaign. I just want to give you a few thoughts about what we are about to achieve this spring. And those of you may know, other than when I'm not being vice president of the MTA, I teach history and architecture at UMass Amherst. So I'm going to give you 4 dates quickly. 1780, our Constitution, which said that we have to cherish, it's a duty of all magistrates, elected officials, to cherish public education. Okay? That is in our Constitution, an eloquent statement. You should all take out your pocket Massachusetts Constitution. Actually, it really is worth a great read. Zoom ahead, keep that word cherish in mind. If you need Madonna in your background, keep that in mind too. Up to 1993. That is when the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts said that the state had failed to honor that Constitution. And that is how we get the foundation budget formula. That is the state's commitment, alleged commitment, to fully fund public education so that every child has at least an adequate, a foundational education. That's 1993. Here we are. Then zoom ahead to 2015. It's the 3rd date. 2015 is the date when the Foundation Budget Review Commission looked carefully and said, we are failing to honor that formula, which means we're failing to honor our own Constitution. Now, there was supposed to be a commission every few years, 1993, 96, and so on, in order to evaluate whether the formula that decides how much each town gets to educate its kids, how do we have to fix it, adjust it to keep it updated. When do you think the first commission was? 2015. Okay, so it's way out of whack, this formula. In 2015, the commission said well over $1 billion. That's how much we were underfunding public education. So you should be outraged. We should all be outraged. One of my ideas for activism, we can all brainstorm later, is that we bring kids, 3 or 4-year-olds, and have a cry-in at the State House so that another generation is not denied the funds they deserve, whether it's $14 million in Easthampton, $94 million owed to the city of Springfield, and on and on and on, okay? Those are the dates. The last date is 2019, the year we fix this and fully fund public education. So, let me tell you quickly the good news, the bad news, and the good news. The good news is we've achieved something that I've now learned the legislators call liftoff, where everyone is saying we have to do that this year. We have to fund public education. We've got to fix the problem. And today, a number of you were there. I know Joe and Lindsay were there, and Aaron Vega was there, one of the co-sponsors of a bill. A bill was announced that can really solve the problem on the K-12 level. And next week, Joe Comerford will be the lead sponsor on the bill to update higher education. We have to all be committed to the notion that public education goes from pre-K all the way through college. We have to commit ourselves to that notion. When Horace Mann talked about the universal public education, he was talking about elementary education. And then it was 8th grade. Then it was 10th grade. Only into the 20th century did we finally say, you should have a high school education. Now everyone deserves, sometime in their lives, if they so choose, access to public higher education. So let's make sure we're committed to that full scope. The bad news, or the worrisome news. There are those out there, those people who fought, for instance, for privatization and charter schools and other things, who went away after question 2, kind of hid away. There are people who would like to privatize public education who are going to use this moment, a fight for funding, in order to achieve some of those privatization schemes. And so I'm going to urge that we all be wary of that and be sure that we're committed to winning the funding that is needed simply to update this foundation budget. It's called a foundation for a reason. It's not the whole building. It is the foundation of great public education. Okay, but the good news is this. There is an incredible outpouring of support to getting this done, and there is righteous outrage that we have not fixed this. Let's be clear, for the past 25 years, most people on Beacon Hill would say they support public education, public higher education, they're committed, and yet somehow we are still $1.5 billion short if you include K-12 and higher education. So something is off. The good news is the people here, the people we saw in Athol and Orange the other night, the people at the State House, an incredible range of legislators and associations and young people, we're saying enough already. It's 25 years since the foundation budget. Let's fix it this year. So there's a lot of people who are going to talk about how we're going to win. Let me just say one thing, that we are aiming to fix it this year. We've actually set a deadline of May 1st. We're not waiting for other people to set a deadline. The community is saying, get it done this spring, so that in the fall, campuses and every school starts to receive the new monies that they deserve. And I want to just point to UTLA, United Teachers Los Angeles, right? I guess I don't need to explain what's going on there. They've actually delayed their strike till Monday, but they are committed to going out on strike. What are they striking for? Is it just salaries? Salaries are important. No, it is they want nurses in schools, librarians. They want art and music for every kid. They want behavioral specialists. They are fighting for the students, for the schools that their community deserves. And they are ready to go out on strike for that, okay? So when we think about what we're going to do, and the good news of everyone being here, the way we're going to win is through righteous outrage. That's a good starting point. But just relentless advocacy. And I'm going to say to all the good legislative friends here, it's going to be also for our friends. Like when you want your family to do something, you love them, you have to nudge them along. And even the greatest advocates will want our support and want to be able to say to the powers that be in Beacon Hill, I got my community pushing me to do this and to do it right. So we have a chance. I really believe this is the chance of a generation to finally provide the public schools and colleges our communities deserve. And now with that, let me turn it over to Stephanie and Nellie.
Hi, everyone. This is incredibly impressive. I am so heartened to see you all here. So we have important work to do, right? I'm Nellie Taylor. I am the Easthampton high school teacher. I've been teaching in this district for 10 years, and I teach in the math department there. I am a public school graduate, and I'm also the president of the Easthampton Education Association.
Hey everybody, my name is Stephanie Marcotte. I'm over at Holyoke Community College, and I'm really proud to be here representing higher ed, because higher ed and public K-12, we're all facing the same struggles together, and we need to be in the same room together having these discussions. So I teach ESL. I have many students from this community, and I'm proud to serve these students. I'm also the chapter president over there of the MCCC.
So we have been asked to give you a little bit of a vision of what's going on in public schools. So as Max said, in 1993, the state formed the foundation budget and by passing the Education Reform Act. And I was 13 when that happened. So 3 years later, I was taking pilot MCAS exams because the best way to make sure that you're having high quality funded public schools is to test them. So, yeah. Anyhow, that's a different forum. So, fast forward to 2015, when the Nonpartisan Foundation Budget Review Commission found that we are underfunding our public schools. During those 25 years, we saw increased emphasis on testing, which had already started when I was a sophomore in high school, 3 years after the Education Reform Act passed. When I became an Easthampton educator in 2008, we were already being instructed to do more with less as educators. And that mantra has not changed over the last 10 years that I've been teaching in this district. And it's incredibly important for you to understand that the reason for this ultimately is because of the foundation budget formula and the legislature's failure to update it appropriately, as they had promised to do. They promised us that they would do this every 3 years. And it's time now for us to make that happen. So in the last 10 years at Easthampton High School, I mean, we have educators in this district who've been teaching for 30 years. And I think it's really important that you understand that I have only seen 10 years of this. And we've seen cuts to staffing. We've seen cuts, and not just to educator staffing, we've seen cuts to custodial staff. We've seen cuts to admin assistant staff. We've seen cuts across the board, especially to paraeducator staff, who are the people who are tasked with helping our most vulnerable students to get caught up and stay caught up with their regular education peers. Paraeducators are a vital part of the education system in Massachusetts. And we can't do what we do without them. So the fact that those positions have been cut, and that in the last 10 years, only in the most recent 2 years has Easthampton been able to level service fund the students of this district. That means there weren't any cuts. Or better, we have had a couple of positions restored. But there were 8 years of cuts in our district. Every year, we're waiting to hear anxiously what's going to be cut this year. And we're not alone in that as educators. It's happening in every district across the state, and it's happening across the nation, honestly. So our students deserve better than that. We've seen a closure of a special education behavioral program that was located in a separate building. Those students were integrated into Easthampton High School, and then after that, the behavioral program was modified routinely over several years and eventually was cut. And those students were now in inclusion classrooms. I'm sure you've heard the push in special ed about inclusion and how important that is for special education students to experience exactly the same educational delivery that their regular education peers experience. In many cases, that is appropriate, and in other cases, it's not. And it's educators' job to determine what's appropriate. And we need to continue to restore positions in our schools all the way from pre-K through high school for students who need behavioral support. And I hear that from my educators in my district every time we meet. Educators are saying we need behavioral support. We need inclusion teachers. We need to support our special ed students because those are some of our most vulnerable population. So, we experience all these difficulties, and we are still the most successful public education program in the nation. This state, Massachusetts, is the most successful. Our state nails it every time, even with all of this lack of funding and support that we told we have been due. So where do our students go? I hear from my seniors every year, well, I'm going to go to HCC and I'm going to save money, and then for 2 years, and I'm going to do my prerequisites, and then I'm going to go and transfer to somewhere else, often to UMass or another public institution. And so, the students, it's important to realize that the students of Massachusetts right now who are graduating this year have never experienced years of fully funded public schools. The students who are graduating from college this year have never experienced fully funded public schools, and that has to change. So my students are going to HCC, they're going to Westfield, they're going to UMass, and they're going to a whole bunch of other really highly qualified institutions across the nation. What I need to do now is turn the mic over to Stephanie so she can tell you how similar the issues are across the board.
Hello. Thank you very much, Nellie. So I have a question for you, and I would like you to raise your hand to show your reaction to the question. So first I'm going to read the question, okay? Should public higher ed be affordable? Raise your hand if you agree. Okay, it looks like 100%. That's what I was going for. Okay. Should public higher ed offer a variety of majors, opportunities, and job support for students? Raise your hand if you agree with this. Okay, thank you. I'm happy we're all on the same page. Preaching to the choir here. So yeah, I'm up on the hill in Holyoke Community College. I'm an adjunct. I am so proud to be at Holyoke Community College. I was shocked when I was hired there. I work with ESL students. We're one of the only credit-bearing ESL programs in the state that's left. We're dwindling down. We have amazing students. I have amazing colleagues, but we're doing more with less, right? I'm working more. I'm getting paid less. My students are receiving less services. My students are paying more. And for what, right? On our lovely fact sheet that we gave you, something to, take home with you, Holyoke Community College, we are owed over $9.5 million. We could do so much with this money. Can't even tell you. Just within the past year, there's a 20% cut across the board. What does that mean for our students? What does that mean for us? What does that mean for our programs? Everything cut 20%. Some fun facts here. So higher ed budgets have been cut by 14%. 14%, it's crazy. Per student funding has been cut by 32%. So we're doing way, way, way less, right? But our students are paying significantly more money and for less. Tuition and fees have increased by over, listen to this, 109%. 109%. State scholarships have also been cut by 32%. So we're sending students to these schools that should be accessible, and they're not. I am living with $150,000 of student debt. $150,000, and I am fine with saying it publicly because it's the truth. And it's not okay for anyone to have to walk into life with this type of debt. So as our students are paying more and receiving less, we're seeing a decrease in classes, a decrease in majors offered because we have to streamline it. So they go into business or accounting or where they're going to go get a job. But is that their passion? Is that the point of pursuing higher ed just to get a job? No, it's not. There are many, many, many majors where these students are able to be successful, make a living, and follow their passion, and they deserve to be able to do this. As departments are cut, just like ESL, we're seeing a decrease in services and a decrease in opportunities. If a student needs a tutor, and there's no tutors because the office is closed early. Holyoke Community College Library isn't even open on the weekends, and they close early in the evening. How is that accessible to evening students? It's not. And so what I have to say is that higher ed and K-12, we need to stick together because we are facing the same issues, and our students are the same, and they deserve better across the board. from beginning until end. So, thank you.
So at this point, I would like to introduce a treasured colleague and community member of Easthampton. Sarah Amoroso is a parent of 3 young boys, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the parent side of things.
Hi. So I'm not used to microphones or large crowds, but I'm so pleased that you're all here. Excuse me. I am an Easthampton parent. I have, as Nellie said, 3 little boys, all of them in Maple School here in Easthampton, and 2 of them receive special education services. And the reason I want to talk to you about that is because the failure to fund special education services correctly is what is causing a lot of the budget problems, along with health insurance, which I can't fix, but I'm going to tell you a little story about Easthampton and some of our budget problems. You may think back to your education and you think about the basics, right? Reading, writing, math, all that. Or maybe you think about things like that really engaged you: music, art, a shop class, sports. All of these have been affected by the losses to the failures of the foundation budget. And a lot of people maybe don't understand special education. They think, you know, it's not something they ever really considered. And the really great news about the way that we do special education now is that kids can be in their communities. They can know friends their whole lives. They're not traveling really far distances to special schools. The difficulty is that it's intensive, right? You have, as our previous speaker spoke about, paraeducators, which are amazing, but you also have specialized instruction, you have tutors, you have other support staff, and they all cost money. So you might recognize some of the losses that we've had, right? We lost, in the last 10 years, just here in Easthampton, 3 elementary school teachers, 3 middle school teachers, and English, math, and science teachers at the high school. And then maybe you think about the things that you loved and recognized, maybe from your middle school or high school or elementary school days. Social studies teachers were lost, metal shop, drama, world language, and library, right? These are all things that maybe keep kids coming to school every day. And then athletic fees and bus fees go up, making accessibility to some other, to school more difficult for other kids. And then there's the stuff that people maybe don't understand as much, right? I'm talking about guidance and guidance counselors, right, that prepare kids for life after high school. I'm talking about 4 special education instructors who they provide specialized instruction in addition to regular classroom instruction for some kids that help them make up these critical gaps. And it's because of teachers like this that my own children are at grade level. I mean, I had a kid with a very severe language delay, and by 2nd grade, he was reading at grade level, which is unreal. I mean, thank you so much. And then you have math and literacy specialists and tutors, right? I know that some literacy specialists have been restored, but some math haven't. And you can see that in the dreaded test scores, right? These are people that make up specific deficits that kids have, and every kid is going to have a time in school where they're missing something. But with the kind of accountability we have now, it's so much harder, right? Then we have an ELL teacher that was lost. Can you imagine? My husband's grandfather, and I'm sure many of your parents, walked into school not speaking English, right? Only now, you're moving so much faster, you have so much more accountability. My husband's grandfather got sent home for not speaking English. You can't do that anymore. You need to learn, and you need to start learning immediately when you arrive at your school. They've also lost adjustment counselors and school psychologists, which, right, help children with severe trauma, difficult home situations, everyday stuff like parents splitting up, or you have to move, but also, behavioral problems, which are, a real key to success in school. And then, of course, the paraprofessionals, right? A lot of these provide instruction. They're not just following a kid around all day and making sure they don't run out of line. Like, they are critical. I mean, my oldest son will to this day talk about the para that was with him day by day. Miss Kim, we love you, if you're here. And she would get him little special toys as a little reward. They get to know the kids so well, and they figure out what motivates them, and he will just say with self-confidence, Miss Kim loves me. And that's what keeps him on track every day at school, is knowing that he's walking into this supportive environment. Also, as Nellie mentioned, custodians, secretaries, and administrators all received cuts, right, which make the school go. And then it's the stuff that's not people, right? People talk about technology all the time. Technology funding has been cut. Textbooks, supplies, curriculum, instructional materials. And yet, I'm proud to say that Easthampton has done so well, with the challenges that they have received. And I think everyone deserves the fantastic chance, right? It shouldn't just be luck that we had great teachers that loved my kids and did a fantastic job because of that. It should be every child receiving that kind of restorative education that brings them to their highest potential. And thank you very much. I don't know who's next.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. So at this point, what I would like to do is sort of let you know that this is a political campaign. We are asking the legislature to change law, to recodify and cherish public education through fully funding it. Because as you can see on the handout, hopefully you have the handout with the K-12 side and the higher ed side, because it's showing you what our local institutions and communities are missing every year that they're already owed. That's not like extra money. That's what the legislature already decided we need, and they're not giving it to us. So, I mean, that's important. And know your number so that when you call your legislator or you write them a postcard, you can say, my community needs, Easthampton needs $717,000 every year that they're already not getting. So I think what it's important for you to do is make sure that you are finding some way to ask your legislators how they are going to support this campaign. And so to the legislators in the room, legislators, please listen up. Calling all legislators. We're going to do kind of a roll call, and we would like to know if you already would like to support this legislation. So,
I hope I'm not missing anyone on here. I have Comerford and Carey, Vega, and Sabadosa. Did I not see maybe Dom come in?
she was going to try and get here, but I haven't seen her. Has anyone, Mindy Dom, are you in the house? Okay, thank you. We have a couple of things that we want to ask for. And so there are going to be two bills introduced, or actually there were two bills introduced today in Boston, one today and one next week. Okay, so one today and one next week. And so this legislation, there's one bill for K-12 and there's one bill for higher ed for funding changes. And so legislators, are you already on board with these bills? Great, because if not, we're going to want to have your constituents talk to you. Do you already support the increased revenues for our public? We need a revenue stream to pay for our public schools. And so what we really need is a fair share amendment that's actually going to be allowed on the ballot. Yes. Do you want to call it out?
Maybe I'll just offer up an opportunity for folks if you want to say yay, for willing to co-sponsor this legislation.
Representative Carey, are you willing to co-sponsor the legislation? I see a yay. All right. And Representative Vega already is a co-sponsor of the legislation, so let's give him a big round of applause. Representative Sabadosa, are you willing to co-sponsor the legislation? Wonderful. Woohoo! Wonderful. So we need support on a funding stream for this. So our legislators, are you willing to sponsor or work on a fair share amendment that provides revenue from taxing people over $1 million of income? I see yes. Okay, great. Millionaires, if you're in the house, thanks for coming. If you want to write a check, the superintendents are here. Yes. Okay, great. Do you also, okay, so here's what I'm worried about, right? I was thinking so we're going to win this campaign, because we're going to win this campaign. And then, after that, we're going to have this funding coming in, and I am now terrified because it's going to be funneled out to privatizers, to testing companies and super expensive individualized curriculum systems, and to charters and to other poison pills that are brought to the legislators to funnel the public dollars back out to privatizers, which is one of the major concerns nationwide right now anyway. So legislators, will you fight against poison pills? I see a yes. Okay, great. And so the last couple of things, we're looking for legislators to actually speak out and start being vocal in the communities themselves. And so if you're willing to do something to get out in front of this and either write a column, I know a lot of you have columns in our local papers. If you're willing to mention this in a column or write a column about how important school funding is, it would be wonderful. And I think Representative Vega, I think you already did that, right? Which is wonderful. He doesn't know. Okay, that's great. And so also we want to make sure that the Senate President and the Speaker of the House know how important this is. And so we're hoping that you will also be vocal in sharing your support for these bills with them directly and sign on with your co-legislators and do that. So. Karen Spilka. Karen Spilka. Karen. And so since you're already here, you've already done one of the major things. You have come to a community forum and you have listened to your constituents. And so we are very, very glad that you have already engaged in the process. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Aaron Vega, who's a state representative from Holyoke, and he has a couple of words he would like to share.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody on a Wednesday night. And thankfully the weather's on our side, right? How many of you remember, I'm a little bit older, got some gray hair. How many of us remember fundraising back in the day to go on a field trip for school, right? To go to Boston, to go somewhere fun, right? To raise some money, to ask your parents, to ask your neighbors, to go to do something extra. Kids are fundraising now to get pens and pencils in their classrooms. Kids are fundraising now to get books in their classrooms. Things have changed. So the talking points. For decades, our districts have been underfunded. Every district has been underfunded and shortchanged. What do I mean by shortchanged? Well, other formulas that the state's put forward, like a charter school reimbursement, isn't fully funded. Circuit breaker, special education, gets about 86% sometimes of what we should be funding, but not right off the bat. It usually comes in during the school year, which superintendents and others have already made cuts. Regional transportation, anyone know about regional transportation? The state said, hey, you guys build a school, we'll pay for the transportation. Well, maybe not. Shortchanged over and over and over. So something's got to change. We've identified that if you actually think about inflation, we're actually 8% behind what we paid in '93 for education. So even though we have an administration and someone in room one saying, hey, I put more into education than any other governor before me, yeah, every governor says that because it's raw dollars, okay? So we are behind the 8 ball extremely bad. So what are we gonna do? So we're talking about a new formula, updating the formula, changing the formula to address a number of things. Insurance costs, the cost of special education, the cost of educating young people that are living in poverty, that unfortunately it does take more. It takes smaller class sizes, it takes those paraprofessionals, it takes those ELA teachers, it takes specialty specialists to come into our classrooms, into our classes. And if we can't afford that, those kids are falling behind. So it was mentioned, Massachusetts, one of the best places for education. Absolutely, yay, yay, yay. We also have the highest, biggest achievement gaps in the country. So it's great to be number one, but you're also number one in the achievement gap. So that's got to be fixed. And coming from Holyoke, half my school committee is here. It's great to see them. All the elected officials, thank you for being here, both local and statewide. But the community members and the parents and the teachers, especially thank you for being here. Everyone thinks, oh, you guys are in the receivership. The money must be pouring in. We're looking at a $5 million deficit next September. $5 million deficit for a district that now has a plan to turn around, and as has been said, to do more with less. To welcome in hundreds of refugee kids from Puerto Rico after the hurricanes. To welcome in anybody into our public education into Holyoke, but yet you do more, you get those test grades up, or else. Or else what? We're already in receivership. So the bill we filed today, the bill has been filed on the Senate side, and we're filing probably on Tuesday on the House side. It's called the Promise Act. I want to call it sort of, point 2 of the foundation budget, right? We're updating things, readjusting how things are paid for. And yes, it will eventually cost more money, but it's also about the money that is going in, how it gets reallocated to make sure that districts can do what they need to do. And so I know that we have a couple of superintendents here, and I'm glad to see them. I hope we're on the same page, working together. I hope that we're working together with our school committee members and our teachers to get this done, because we all have to pull on the same rope. Because if we're pulling on the rope in different directions, it's not going to have the result we want. Governor's going to put out a budget or a bill with his budget coming out probably next week or the week after, I think by the 18th. And I'm certain that it's great to have the governor talking about education reform. But what's that really mean? What kind of ties, what kind of loopholes, what kind of restrictions, what kind of other achievement things are going to be put in that? So we're worried about what he may be saying, but at least he's talking about it. Last week, when we were sworn in, my colleagues will recognize that the minority leader, Brad Jones, spent almost 3 minutes talking about the need for education reform. When I had a bill amendment last year and got co-sponsors on that, half of them were Republicans. So this is a bipartisan issue. How do we advocate for this? This is fantastic, okay? I'm not too sure about the cry-in, okay? I like the idea, but here's what we need. And I'm not so always impressed as a rep when I get the 100 signatures, well, 100 signatures would mean something, but 20, 30 signatures on a petition. How many of you sign petitions on your way into the grocery store and don't really know what you're signing, right? The personal letter. One of the best advocacy groups is the food banks, Food Bank of Western Mass, fighting for MFAP money. We got mailed in one day, with hundreds of them in the State House. It was paper plates colored by kids saying, support MFAP, right? It was personalized, it told stories. Tell us stories. We know the data, okay? We know the data. We've got reams and reams of it, right? Thankfully, now many of my colleagues are paying attention to the data, which is good. Tell us the stories. What's happening in Easthampton? What's being cut? What's not happening anymore? What's going on with class sizes, right? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about food access. Let's talk about the social emotional aspect that's not happening, right? These are the things we want to address in the bill. The other thing with advocacy, and I'm with you. I'm with you. I've been against MCAS testing. Thankfully, I never took it. I've been against it since it started. I've been on the last 2 terms on the committee to try to at least put a moratorium on the high stakes part of it. Still have the testing but take away. But those are separate issues. Stay focused. Don't convolute this issue. Once you go in there and start talking about a rep about funding and then start griping about MCAS and then start about the Fair Share Amendment, hey, I'm for it, but stay focused. Don't start talking about you lost them. Once you start talking about 3 or 4 other things, listen, the money's there. We can pay for anything in the state budget. We just can't pay for everything. Okay, so this has got to be a priority, and it's got to get done soon in order for making sure that that gap is closed. So when you're advocating, get those meetings. If you end up talking to staff, it's okay, especially for representatives, because we have 1 staffer. They're our right-hand person, okay? My good friends in the Senate have a few more staffers, but if you talk to staffers, they're with the rep, they're with the senator, okay? Don't be insulted, right? They will take your name, they'll take the notes, they'll take whatever you're giving them. But get out there and talk to people. Advocacy days are great. You're all going to come up on the hill and you're all going to be pounding on doors. Great. But do it individually as well when you can. Make those phone calls. And you got 20 minutes while dinner's cooking, make a few phone calls. Even if they're out of your district, okay? Because especially if you're here in Holyoke, Northampton, Easthampton, we're already with you, all right? If you're a teacher, you can call other representatives and other senators in other parts, and we can talk about offline maybe who we should be targeting, okay? And you will know better. We'll know better who to target in probably about 4 weeks when committee assignments are put together. This is going to be very telling who we need to be targeting. Last two things. It is important to connect K through 12 with higher ed. Absolutely. Again, stay focused on the issue. There's going to be a separate bill about education. But let me just give one quick example. Where's my HCC teacher who is up here? Okay. HCC. 75% of the students entering Holyoke Community College are taking remedial English and math. These are students that passed the MCAS and passed the requirements of high school, but are not ready for college. And I've sat across the room from the commissioner telling me that, yeah, the MCAS does not make you college ready or work ready. Then what the hell is it for? 75% of the students entering HCC, remedial English and math. With all the interventions that we do at HCC, everything, the list goes on and on, from transportation, childcare, social emotional, all the implementations we do, all the extra stuff we do, which isn't funded, we move 25% of them through 2 years of school. So 50%, so for every 100 students, 50 of them aren't even getting through Holyoke Community College. This is a problem. We talk about workforce, we talk about growing our communities. Why do we think we don't get businesses out in Western Mass, right? Because the people look at the achievement gap, they look at the skilled workforce that's not here or is here, they're evaluating what our school systems are like. So this is critical to economic development, it's critical to our communities, it's critical to Massachusetts as a whole. Second thing, last thing. This is not going to be easy, okay? I like May 1st as a deadline. We talked today about making sure that this is implemented for the next school budget. Will there be extra dollars? Hopefully, some extra dollars in this first round of it. But just as in '93, it was a 5 to 7 year implementation. We're not talking about put $1 billion into next year's budget for education. I wish we could. Believe me, I wish we could. I'd do that in a heartbeat. We're talking about an implementation and a phase-in. But we're addressing those issues of social emotional, ELA, and those extra issues that come with our families that live in poverty. So we've got to get this done, but we're only going to get it done together. So our superintendents, our school committee members, our teachers, our legislators, we all got to work together. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone wants to get something done. There's going to be a number of bills probably filed. The one that Mary Keefe from Worcester and I are filing is the one that we hope you will support. It's the one I think that has lots of traction. From my understanding, there's been lots of talk over the last few months. MTA seems to be on board with some of the changes that were tweaks to the original foundation recommendations. This can happen, and it has to happen. And the only way it happens is with all of us, making those calls, knocking on doors, writing letters, and maybe a cry-in, to make sure that this stays priority number one. So again, thank you from me, from the legislators that I know are already supporting this across the Commonwealth. Thank you for being out here. This is step one. We will see you more and more and more over the next 5 months till May 1st, I guess. We got to get this done. So again, thank you for everything, and let's get to work.
Thank you so much to all of our representatives for being here tonight. Let's give everybody a round of applause. This was great. We really appreciate all of you being here and all of your advocacy that you're doing on this. So as you're wrapping up and saying your goodbyes, we hope that you'll still visit the photo booth over here to take your pictures and post them on social media. We've got a letter writing station in the middle, and if you don't know who your representatives are, we are happy to look them up for you, but you can write postcards, we'll mail them for you. You can take a letter with you and fill in the format from here, and also see who the school committees that have passed resolutions. So feel free to look at our information, and please make sure you sign up on a clipboard that says you'd like to continue this conversation. Thanks again for being here tonight.